So, an historic appointment. Lieutenant General Frances Allen becomes the first female vice chief of the defense staff. Now, the announcement, of course, comes while the military reels under what the Prime Minister calls troubling allegations of misconduct within its highest ranks. There are currently investigations into the former chief of the defense staff, General Jonathan Vance, and his newly minted successor, Admiral Art McDonald, who stepped aside while he's under investigation. Now, Lieutenant General Allen recently served as Canada's military representative to NATO in Brussels. She's taking over from the current vice chief of the defense staff, Lieutenant General Mike Rouleau, who was actually passed over to stand in for Admiral McDonald. So what's going on inside the military? Is this a step in the right direction? What impact will this have on the culture that is reeling under these investigations? Let's find out. Joining me now are some MPs. Anita Vandenbeld is the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of National Defence. James Bezan is the Conservative Party's defence critic, and Randall Garrison is the NDP defence critic. A good afternoon to all of you. Ms. Vandenbeld, I got to start with you. This appointment, obviously, a very historic appointment, but why was the current Vice Chief of the Defence Staff, Lieutenant General Mike Rouleau, first passed over to stand in for the CDS, and now, after a very short time, replaced quickly by Lieutenant General Allen?
What we're looking at here is getting the right people into the right positions so that we can affect total culture change. We have seen that we need to make a difference. We need our Canadian Armed Forces, our women and men in uniform, to reflect the Canadians that they serve and protect. And I think today's appointment, we know, is an incredible, meritorious appointment. We know that General Allen has an incredible history. She served as the military liaison, the military commander in NATO in Brussels. She has been the Deputy Vice Chief of Defense Staff, Director General for Defense Security. This is somebody who I think is going to do a phenomenal job, and I think that what we need to do is get the right people because we need culture change.
Okay, you need culture change. Just let me stay with you. You need culture change, but this is only happening after two chief of the defense staffs are under investigation. This is an important appointment, but what concrete steps is the government actually taking to tackle the issue of misconduct and how it went on for so long?
And that's exactly what the minister has said. Everything is on the table. Right now, we have in the Defense Committee, we've had some testimony with some very, very good recommendations. We had former Deschamps come. We've had academics like Dr. Eichler and others. We are getting veterans and academics and advocates who are giving us recommendations, and I think that many of those things are things that we're going to have to do. But we've already started. I mean, this is something that started, Operation Honor was just the beginning. We've just released the Path to Dignity and Respect on culture change. We've made sure that we have we've implemented the SMRCs, the Sexual Misconduct Response Centers, Bill C-77, which is a Victims' Bill of Rights. We have reviewed all unfounded cases of sexual misconduct. We've created a case management system so we can actually track the cases. We've done training. This is just part of a continuum of the actions that we are taking. And is it enough? Right. We know that, and that's why we're continuing to do more.
Okay, Mr. Bezan, your reaction to the appointment and if this will fundamentally address the challenges facing the military right now that many call a crisis.
First and foremost, I want to congratulate Lieutenant General Allen on her appointment. She's very familiar with the office, having been the deputy there before. She has a very distinguished career, and you know, as conservatives, we've already said that we need to have more women serving in command positions. You know, and I'm hoping she's there for a long time to stay, because she's the 8th Vice Chief of Defense Staff under these Liberals in just over 5 years that we have just burnt through Vice Chiefs of Defense Staff. So, you know, we need stability here because this position is so important to the overall function of the Canadian Armed Forces. The Vice Chief of Defense Staff is responsible for morale and the human resource side of the military, but she's also, as a Vice Chief of Defense Staff, overseeing a lot of the procurement projects. So, you know, we need to have stability, which we haven't enjoyed in that position for quite some time. And I think it also sends a strong signal throughout the Canadian Armed Forces that this is about making the changes that are required so that we can have a culture that's respectful of women, and that women can feel comfortable and confident in serving in the Canadian Armed Forces. But we still have the problem at the top, and that is that Minister Sajjan has continued to deny any wrongdoing on how he handled the case of sexual sexual misconduct allegations against General Vance, and also the current situation with Admiral McDonald. So as long as these remain outstanding and Minister Sajjan refuses to address the issue here of that he is part of a cover-up in trying to protect General Vance and getting down to the root cause of sexual misconduct within the military,
right.
Changing the process on how we find and appoint chiefs of defense staff and other command officers to ensure that there is respect and protection of women.
Okay, so you use the word cover up and protecting General Vance. There is an investigation undergoing there, a parliamentary probe. Mr. Garrison, I mean, obviously, do you think this critical appointment to the vice chief of the defense staff will make the culture change, or do we need things, for example, given the two former CDSs are now under some kind of investigation, and I go General Vance denies the allegations against them, but do we need an independent, totally independent investigation here?
Well, first of all, let me congratulate Lieutenant General Allen on her appointment. It's always great when the talents and leadership abilities of women who serve in the Canadian Forces are recognized. I'm only sorry that it took a crisis with sexual misconduct to break this particular glass ceiling. Now, as to the question of whether this is enough, of course it's not enough. It's a good step. It's a positive step. But we have to give the assurance to people serving in the Canadian Forces, in particular women, that they can serve equally without sexual misconduct. And if there aren't allegations taken seriously, and if there aren't consequences as a result of those allegations, then it's hard to see how we'll make real progress. The Liberals have suggested today they want to create a more independent agency for dealing with these things. This is something New Democrats have been calling for a long time, but we'll, like all Liberal proposals, we'll wait to see when that legislation actually comes forward and what's actually in it.
Yeah, let me go back to Ms. Vandenbeld. When will that legislation come? But just as importantly, given there are concerns about the independence of the military and how it might investigate the very highest levels, two CDSs, two chiefs of the defense staff, why not have a fully independent investigation the way your government appointed an independent investigation and body into the Governor General and allegations against the former Governor General?
Well, first of all, the National Investigative Service is not part of the chain of command, so I think we need to correct that. And we are right now finalizing the terms of reference, and they'll be public very soon about a review. But I'd like to just take exception to something that was said earlier. Everything that we're hearing, all the testimony, is only corroborating and showing that Minister Sajjan, every step of the way, took the appropriate action to the appropriate authorities. And what we're seeing is we are seeing consequences. And I think we're going to be seeing more of that. What had in 2018 was somebody who did not want to launch an investigation. Nonetheless, the minister, within a day, made sure that PCO was trying to get the evidence and information to be able to do that. And with Admiral McDonald, we saw that very, very quickly from the time that a phone call came to the switchboard, it went to senior officials, and then a National Investigative Service military investigation started. So Minister Sajjan, every step of the way, what he should have.
Okay, I have a minute here, Mr. Bazan. I know, and Mr. Garrison, I know you want to respond to that. Real quick, Mr. Bazan.
Well, the Privy Council office is not an investigative body, and that's who he reported it to. They're a political office supporting the PMO, supporting the Prime Minister and the bureaucracy across all departments. And let's not forget, Evan, that the National Investigative Service and the Provost Marshal does report through the chain of command, and we have to make sure that Minister Sajjan didn't use the National Defense Act of actually, if he wanted the NIS to do the investigation, he should have had the General Vance step aside as well, and he didn't. He could have done a board of inquiry under Section 45 of the National Defense Act, or he could have brought in a supernumerary justice to carry out an investigation. He did none of that. He just had a staff contact the PCO. That is not being responsible.
Okay, just real quick, Mr. Garrison, last word.
Well, what we had is the Chief of Defense Staff that had more than one allegation of sexual misconduct against him, who stayed in office for more than 3 years while the minister did nothing. And one of those people who has made public her allegations said that the sexual misconduct of the Chief of Defence Staff was widely known among senior leadership. So for the Liberals to pick at one case of who knocked on what door when evades the major question of how could someone continue to serve as Chief of Defence Staff who had very serious doubts about his behavior when it came to sexual misconduct. Someone needed to have acted.
All right, I got to leave it there. I know there's going to be lots more committee work on this. Ms. Vandenbeld, it's a big day, by the way. A big glass ceiling was broken. Mr. Garrison, Mr. Bazan, great to have you, all three of you on the program. I appreciate it very much.
Anytime, Evan.